Hello, everyone. Good evening, Facebook, friends, family. Not skating in tonight. Just don't feel like skating tonight. I thought I'd never say that. In light of the happenings that are going around in America today, I decided to show up here tonight and to bring the energy down as we get to our roots, to go down. I don't know where to begin. I've had people call and ask or text or instant message me and ask me how I'm doing. I don't know. It changes from day to day, from moment to moment. It all changes of how I'm doing, how I feel. Um, there are memes with all this stuff going on, the murder bees, the COVID, the coronavirus stuff, everything that's going on. Everybody wants to redo 2020, but what if 2020 is supposed to be like this? What if 2020 is the year we've been waiting for? A year so uncomfortable, so painful, so scary, so raw that it finally forces us to grow. A year that screams so loud, finally awakening us from our ignorant slumber. A year we finally accept the need for change, declare change, work for change, become the change. A year we finally band together instead of pushing each other further apart. 2020 isn't canceled, but rather the most important of them all. That is by Leslie Dwight. Okay, so with Spirituality Night Live, I would like to just remind folks that may not know the purpose of the show. It is to get back to the spiritual, to the root of things spiritually, because spirituality speaks to my heart. I um, I left Facebook about 3.5 years ago, and I just didn't know how I could show up in a positive manner. So I stopped. I got off. I did some soul searching, some soul work, went through some things to come to this place where I feel like I have something to contribute to the world. How wild is it now that it's worse than it was 3.5 years ago? But 3.5 years ago, things didn't bother me for the political things that were going on. It was because it was about humanity. It was as if I knew, we knew. When I say we, I'm talking about me as a black man, that we knew things would be like this if certain things were allowed to be on a rise, and they were, and here we are. We knew it. We're here. And I don't know how to feel about that. I don't really don't know how to speak about that. I was talking with a friend earlier, and she was talking about how she was bringing up some ideas in front of another black person about what could be done, and the other black person was silent. And that is something that this black person is never silent about. But I really feel we do not know what to do or what can be said any more than we have already tried to to get people to see things. Um, so I'm here tonight because I'm trying to figure out a way to encourage uncomfortable conversations for people to know what can be done. Tonight, I have a friend of mine who's a fantastic, beautiful light and soul, Terry Diebold, and she's backstage in the green room. I'm going to bring her on. Initially, she was to come on to talk more about things on the spiritual nature, but we cannot avoid what's going on in the world today, and it touches each and every one of us. So before I go any further, let me bring on Terry to help me with this. Hi, Terry.
Hey, Melvin.
All right. I've got to turn her up so I can hear her. Give me 1 second. Me. How did I have her before? Now I don't. Bring that volume up. Speak now, Terry.
Yeah, hi, Melvin.
Hello. Now I got you. Okay. Thank you for coming in tonight. It is good to see you. I think you're the perfect person to talk about this. And I really don't know where to start because my mind is just, it's filled with different feelings about how I feel about it, how my child feels about it, how my other friends who have asked what can they do to, I don't know. So I just thought I'd go on here totally unplanned and figure out a way to figure out a comfortable way to make some uncomfortable dialogue to make it better. So how are you in this, may I ask?
Well, I was thinking when I knew that I was going to be on your show tonight, um, how how an old white lady is going to address this issue, and I think actually I'm a good person to address this issue because I represent a lot of people, maybe not as old as me, who don't really know what to do in the face of this. And, this has to do, you can't divorce our spirituality from this situation of, of prejudice in our country and in our world. It is a deep part of your spirituality, and it should be a deep part of mine. I um, heard something the other day that really struck me. The person said, "You know, we're not different races. There is only one race of people, the race of people. It doesn't matter all the rest of the parts of that, but this whole thing about, well, what race are you or what race are you? No, no, we're people. That's our race, and that's a good starting point. However, the waters have been muddied for hundreds and hundreds of years in this country, so that piece of humanity was extracted out of Black people, and they were made to people understood them to be inferior and to be used. And unfortunately, that whole mindset has still exists today. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. And so the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? What are the white people going to do about this? And when we were talking a little bit earlier today, I wanted to know, when you mentioned some things that you've experienced. I said, most people don't know this. You need to talk tonight about your experiences as a Black man, moving quite comfortably, I might add, in a white world.
Absolutely. The that first got presented to me because I saw on Facebook another person who wanted to know more about the stories of racism, and and she almost wished that she hadn't asked because it kind of got mixed, a little misunderstood about what it was or how it was that she was asking. That can happen sometimes in text. But I knew her heart, and I knew what she wanted to know. And I just had to say, you got to stick in there. You got to stay in there because she can connect and relate to people that I could never. And that's how I really feel about this. I'm not going to say that I gave up. on trying to make people understand or see it, but I've just got to the point where it isn't. I can't do it anymore. You're right. This damn checking out. White people are going to have to do this at this point. So I am happy that you're here, and many other people are calling and asking those hard questions because that's the only way that we're going to get through this. And when she asked that question, I didn't want to go down that road. I didn't want to talk about it. Um, y- you kind of just ignore it sometime. You can't stay there in that mindset on a day to day. You have to rise above it. You have to push through it. You have to show your kids that it's okay. And at the same time, you have to warn them. You have to tell them. On a personal, real note, just to let people know, recently I just moved. I just moved from the Spotsylvania area to Stafford. And as a young man growing up from Spotsylvania, I'm, you know what, actually, I'm going to back up. I'm going to actually back up and give you how I found out that I was black. And I found out when I asked my mom what a nigger was because I learned that in school. That was my first moment of realizing that there was a difference because I didn't know. We there were white kids, but they didn't speak that way. We were just all friends.
Mm-hmm.
But when I actually was in school and you got around other people, then you got exposed to this separation. And ultimately that's what it is. It's a separation thing where, as you were talking earlier about, we are all one race, but there are people who think that we're not, and that separation is there. So let's go back to me learning the difference. That's something you had to learn. And and I also knew how to not accept certain things that was being said. So it became a thing where the separation grew in me even more. I can remember being in high school in Spotsylvania and hearing nigger jokes, this, that, and you'd almost have to be with them and respond with your own jokes so to even the playing field. And there was a couple of times when things got a little rough and out of hand, but a lot of white people were really okay and comfortable saying nigger jokes or things. And I even the playing field on the field, I can't respond back with how I did, but that's just the way that I dealt with it. Um, you start off as a man in the world and you're hearing things, black people do this, white people do that, and I even show up in the world till this day, making sure that I tip 20, 25% each time so that you can't say that this black guy doesn't tip well. This is how I show up in the world. So let's skip all the little stories, all the things. I mean, there's plenty of them. It's just really even hard to get in. It's just part of everyday life, all the little things that just happen. Now you here I am a man and then I have kids and I haven't had to tell Slade all of these stories just yet. He's hearing them now because of what's going on. But even with Jaden, when I had to explain to him about the difference because now he's black, even though he's half white, he is still technically considered for some reason now he's
Mm-hmm.
just black. And you have to tell him about the police and how to show up, and if you're doing something because he's in Richmond, he's in VCU, you have to show up different. You can't expect to be treated like your white friends all the time. And the best way that I could explain to him how cops see people is to say, imagine a police officer being like a dog catcher, and the policemen, they see everybody as dogs. Most of the police officers see most people as Labradors, golden retrievers, little wet kissy mouth dogs. Sometimes you got ankle biters. Sometimes you have mutts and you have to deal with them in a particular way. But then there's a lot of cops that see black people as Rottweilers and pit bulls, and they are fully equipped with lots of money to be to deal with people. And look at our doctors. They don't even have masks to deal with this coronavirus thing going on. But we have so much money into the police for their protection against us. So these are the conversations that I have with my kids, which are way different than I can imagine that white people are ever going to have with their kids. And it's really a delicate thing because you don't want to be a victim. So you don't want to speak in that manner all the time, but you have to show them that there's a difference because you do not want them to get caught up. You don't want a phone call where something has happened or gone wrong. Um, they need to be aware. So my my kids, they understand it. They don't stay in it, but they're aware of it, and that is just the thing that's just a little quick moment in my life of how I see the world and how I choose to see it. Um, I will give you another story that just happened with Jaden and I when it came to these for protesting and being here in Fredericksburg. As a man who is 49 years old right now, I approach these matters differently than I did when I was 20. And my 19-year-old wants to go and take part of the things that are out here. And I'm looking at it like, hey, peaceful protest, that's good. Go down when you're supposed to. But at 8 o'clock, that's when they're going to put the curfew in effect. Just do what the cops say. And my son said something to me that really made me see it through his lens. And he said, you're just following the same Jim Crow laws that they put on you a long time ago. And that is why we need to change this. I had to pull myself back on my right thing to do, you know, because he's making a good point that it's been hidden in that particular place. It's that no one has been held accountable for actions against black people that are just to the limb, way on the other side. And they get to tell you what to do. They are the law. They are the word, and they are not held accountable for it. And so I'm at this place where I really don't know how to advise my son except make smart decisions. But again, I don't know how I feel about it because I'm a professional person in the world. You got to show up a particular way. You can't say certain things because not everybody's going to understand. Um, as a business owner, until 2008, I was never in the front. I had a white woman in front leading my business, going to the expos, doing everything. I was always in the back because I'm black. When it came to showing up to painting people's homes, once the contract was written and everything was okay, then I would come in. Just because it's different. In 2008 was when Obama became president, and I saw light. I saw that there were enough people that could help me see beyond that filter that I have to see through. And it gave me enough courage to start my own video business and coming out and putting my name out in front for the first time. That gave me hope. Um, but that's kind of how I've been living my life and dancing this edge, but in this white world, in this black world, where I have just as many white friends as I do black friends. And when I got off of Facebook, like I said, it wasn't the political thing. It was just the fact that decent, good, loving white people that I dealt with all the time, that I was doing things with, just couldn't see it or get it. They could not get it. And it just hurt to see them stand so strong on their thoughts. And here, there's a group of people screaming to the top of their lungs, Black Lives Matter. And then people going to respond back with All Lives Matter. It's like, as if we don't know all lives don't matter. I mean, come on. We know that.
But no life matters if Black lives don't matter. And that's what people miss.
They,
That,
they do miss that.
right. I wanted to ask you, um, this is a show about spirituality. What has happened to your spirituality from 3 weeks ago to today?
Mine personally is acceptance of this, because my spirituality has changed um, in the last 3 years, meaning I have learned that it's more about embracing this darkness and coming down deep to the things that we don't like and the things that we don't want to see. And that is where the transformation happens. So I see it as the necessary evil that has to be in order to overcome. So, as scary as it is my it is okay, as long as we can bring light and love and do an open conversation where it gets uncomfortable, where you don't want to do it, you don't want to speak, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but you say it anyway. You just go and be unapologetic and just speak and let people deal with it and hear it. That's where
I
I'm for the first time.
I think that you've hit on an important point about why people don't talk about these problems of how blacks are treated, and indigenous people, the Native Americans, and people of Asian descent. I mean, the prejudice is so huge that those, and I'm not uh I'm no paragon of knowing how to do this myself, but most people that I know don't, are, like you said, afraid to say something that is offensive, partly because before we know it, we've put our foot in our mouth. And then that's when you get the stare that, oh my God, I completely missed that point, which is why I think that um, having, being able to feel like you can say what you want to say on your part without worrying about us. We can worry about you because you have you know what you personally have gone through in your life. You can handle yourself pretty well, but we're stumbling along here. And one of the things that we talked about earlier today that really really hit home for me, and I think you've got a link or a way to send the link, is a posting I saw on Facebook that said 75 things that white people can do for justice, for justice for Black people, for justice for Indigenous people. And there are 75 different suggestions in that post, most of which, excuse me, most of which I hadn't thought of. And I got an education just reading down through those things. And once again, it's my ignorance of what it's like on a daily basis to be white and to be privileged and to know that I can walk through a store and I'm not going to be followed, and I can write a check and not be, looked up and down because I've written a check and then be told, no, I'm sorry, we don't accept checks. These are things that I know that you can speak to. And I guess what I want to know is, you looked at that list briefly. Uh, what do you want to say about all of this?
I looked at it briefly, and there were things that I was amazed, and I say, "Wow, yeah, that is different." But I would like for white people to know this when it comes to that. Do those things, but also for the ones that have asked me those questions specifically, they must know the fact that they even care enough to ask those questions is huge, because I think that if a person can understand what Black Lives Matters is about and not respond with all lives matters, you've just a huge step into the cause, into it. And it's just like it's just like when the election happened. I've had friends call up and say, I didn't understand why you were upset before. I didn't see what you've been trying to show me. I see it now. I see racist people. I see them show up in my life right now. Um, hold on a second. I'm having a little difficulty. Okay, here we go. So my hat's off to those that are brave enough to want to ask and to want to do stuff, because it's all about. Oh, I have to get another mic. Okay, let's see if that's any better. It's all about what you do at home, in my opinion. Like I said, I never knew that I was even black until I was told that, because I learned it through school. So that means some kid at school was told by his mama, daddy, cousin, uncle, whoever, that there was a difference and there was a way to call a person in that derogatory tone word. Just don't do that anymore. Call that stuff out. You know, even if it's your husband, call it out. And I know people who have kids who will not continue that pattern, that way of being, even if the person in the family doesn't realize that they're being racist or in that place and using that judgment and using those words. Call them out. Say it's not right. Call just and here we are at this place where it's easy to tell what's not right. So I don't know about all 75 things, but dang, if you could just accept Black Lives Matter for right now, if you could just ask yourself this, hmm, when we get on the other side of this and this now becomes history, what side are you on? Are you on the side where you understand it, or are you on the side where you're just going to say, I don't get it, I don't see it, it's not for me, wham, I don't believe it? Or you're gonna look to your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, or your friends and your neighbors and understand that there is something going on that you may not understand.
You know, I think that something that would make a huge difference is if any slur was left uh, out there without you saying, me saying something about it. Ha ha ha. You can turn away and be very uncomfortable and decide you're not going to be around that person anymore. But to call that out as not letting them hide behind the good old boy, ha ha ha, uh, mentality that has allowed this culture to last this long, uh, allowed there to be two sets of laws, or um, two under excuse me, two understandings of how you treat people. And just doing that, and it is, sometimes you do have to be brave to do that. You Melvin have to be brave to walk down the street and trust that you're going to be okay. But people, uh, well, not so much in my family, but uh, to to stand up and say to your brother-in-law, for instance, hey, we're not going to talk that way in this house. I don't want my kids to hear that kind of language. And if it's been going on for a long time and you finally decide to say something, that is going to cause some problems. But once again, I get back to the spiritual issue of how can you how can you uh, have a spiritual relationship with someone that is tainted, that if you're going to treat them one way and treat somebody else another way, that's that's the absolute opposite of having a spiritual connection with somebody. We cannot be spiritually connected with God on Sunday and then go out and do this crap the rest of the week. Just doesn't work that way.
Um, as you were speaking, I was reminded of a friend of mine who I just spoke to her probably 20 minutes before we went on, and I apologize. I know she's out there watching right now, but I hadn't really had a conversation with her since 3.5 years ago, and um, and she reminded me this evening that I was trying to tell her then about Black Lives Matter, and her response was All Lives Matter. And now she gets it. She sees it. And she was asking, how does she now that she sees it, she's like, I don't know how my other friends don't see it. How come they don't get it? And she went on to tell me too, because she lives here locally, that that her children knew of some of the people that were I'm not going to say that were probably causing a little bit of trouble during the protests downtown, maybe in their trucks and riding in loud or whatever. But again, they know different, and that difference has to happen because that what you just talked about is how we talk to people. We talk two different ways. The children knew that the way that those kids were going to respond was not the way in the highest. And that is the spiritual component that you're talking about. It's because it all comes down to how are you going to show up in the world? And that is a question that I try to ask myself all the time. How am I going to show up? What am I going to say? Is what I'm doing, thinking, or saying part of evolution? Am I doing creation, or am I stifling it? And I just think that is just something that would just help people spiritually for any decision that you need to make. How is it that you're responding? What if it comes out of your mouth? Is it helping? Is it positive? Is it moving? Is it going to allow something, or are you stopping something from happening? That is how I think things should happen and come back to a spiritual place inside. How does one do that? How about you? What do you think about that?
Well, I when you were talking, I was just thinking about your story about not knowing what a nigger is, and my experience of my cousin in Texas. They had a black woman who was taking care of the family. It wasn't in my house, but and she had been with them for years and years and years. And he looked at her hand one day when she reached across to do something on the table, and he said, "Hey, your skin's black." And it was the first time that it ever occurred to him, and he was probably 6 years old.
Hmm.
And it has to start in the home. It
Mhm.
has to start with the children. They, we've all seen the memes up on Facebook. You have to be taught to hate. And that is really the very basis. you have to be taught to hate. If you don't grow up hating, you don't even know what it is. If you don't see it around you, you don't know what it is. But when it's in front of you every single day, it you absorb it by osmosis. Your brain gets brainwashed, and pretty soon you're out there with these groups that are waving the Confederate flag, and that's another whole thing. Don't get me started
Yeah, it's
about
yeah,
why
baby steps.
yeah, but why people don't understand what is wrong with these statues.
Right. Yeah, that's another whole
Yeah, that's
thing.
another
That's
whole thing. But
yeah.
once again, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it was a Confederate state. Well,
It's
no,
part of
you know what?
history.
It was, but after the war was over, no, it was not a Confederate state anymore. And we shouldn't be calling it a Confederate state. And I've always said, gee, do you see statues of Hitler in Germany?
Right.
No.
Right.
So anyway, I think that we have we have an obligation. Anybody who has children, young children, you have a chance. Those of you who have older children, you all need to be talking about this. You need to talk about what it feels like to witness this kind of thing happening in our country.
I've I'm thinking about prejudice and racism and wanting to point out that there is a difference because any of us can operate out of prejudice, but all of us cannot be racist. It's a totally different thing. And in my opinion, it's impossible for a black man to be racist. I could be prejudiced. I could say some things that are prejudiced. I could never be racist. And just based on that, then that means the person that could be racist has to see that there is a difference. I mean, if you don't understand why, or if you don't see it, you have to understand just that alone is why there is a difference because you are here with something in your thinking and you can't go the other way with it. And I don't know, I just wanted to mention that because I see people respond that way and then want to take you down this long rabbit hole of saying, well, this, well, that, and then we end up at this place. What about black on black crime? And we're not even there.
Oh
We're
yeah,
just, there's
yeah,
don't even go there yet. It's just not time for that.
yeah.
So again, I think the best thing that could happen is to influence, to start at home, to talk about it, to not pretend like it doesn't happen, like you say, sometimes you want to be silent about it. It's too uncomfortable, but call it out, speak it, and speak out what it is. Um, um,
The person that you speak out against, that's the person who ought to feel bad, who ought to be uh, ashamed. Not you, not me, for instance, for speaking out and being afraid of what that's going to do to the family. Everybody knows what the family is in many cases. Uh, and it's about, okay, maybe I'm not out there marching, but I can I can rock the boat in other ways.
yeah, I was just thinking again about that whole prejudice part because I I just want people to understand just because you may be Polish or whatever and you see prejudice against you, it is a definite difference with racism. And
Right,
you cannot let cousin Joe, oh, that's just the way cousin Joe speaks.
right.
No,
No.
that's got to stop. It's not the same thing. It's got to stop because it has lifelong it's for the whole life, and it just goes all the way back down to where you see it rearing its ugly head right now in the police department because it's not checked. That's what happens when it goes unchecked. Normal. They see it as normal. You just put your hands in your pocket and do what you want to do. because you're not going to be held accountable.
Yeah, right.
Um, let's see. Another question that someone posed to me was, how does this play into the biases that people have about things in general? What's the difference between having biases and then showing up in this way to be racist?
Well, you know, the very meaning of the word bias is that you have uh, a, a, a presupposed view of something and you're not open to another view. And so being biased means, like, for instance, if I think that this person over here in my program is smarter than this person over here because, oh, he's Asian, so he's definitely smarter. That's a bias on my part. But how you treat people, number one, recognizing your own bias is really the really important, and that's why uh, we need a good lesson here in how to recognize your own biases. I mean, I hear it all the time. Oh, yeah, well, why doesn't he just get a loan? Oh, really? Why doesn't he just get a loan? Because he can't get any credit. Why not? Well, because they look at him and they don't like the fact that he hasn't had a check-in. Well, why not? Why hasn't he had those things? Because he's not white. A lot of those things. Yes, you have middle class people who do have those things, who know how to do it, uh, how to get along in a white culture. But just thinking that my experience is the same as yours, or your experience is the same as mine, is a bias right there. We there's something called an alpha bias and a beta bias. An alpha bias is we're all different. A beta bias is we're all the same. No, we're not all the same. We're individuals. We are people. We have likes and dislikes that should be honored. Is it hard to honor somebody who is out there setting buildings on fire and doing it in the name of uh, this movement? Yeah, it's really hard to respect those people. You don't have to respect them, you don't have to live with them,
Where'd you go?
but you have to recognize your own biases, and you have to start at home and clean up your own act, which is why white people can't sit back anymore. They cannot sit back and say, well, somebody else is going to do it and they're going to pass some laws, and yeah, well, here's my friend over here and that's not a problem. No, we need to get off our butts and do some of these things that make a difference.
Beautiful. I can rest on that point. We need to get off our butts and do something about it. That will work. Um, Terry.
I can't hear you for some reason.
Okay.
Nope, I've got my volume turned up all the way.
How about now?
A call came in, and I don't know whether that did something to the phone, but I'm going to listen real hard.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say thank you, thank you, and we will put the a link in here for those 75 ways that that a person can look to see what they can do. And We can, if someone wants to talk to you, they can reach her at terrydiebold.com. And I think that's it. That's what I'm going to say for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye
For,
bye.
all right. Bye bye. And thank you all for watching tonight. There's a lot in here that I need to go back through and kind of unpack and think about. The biggest lesson that in this all that I believe is just to really do some work at home. If you're struggling to understand it, hang in there. Please hang in and see if you can see it a different way. That is the key here, to see it differently than you have seen it before, to understand it differently. That is the only way to bring about change. Thank you all. I'm Melvin Brown. Thanks for watching Spirituality Night Live, and I'm out.